Hey, KU fans, welcome back to KU Sports Extra. I'm Matt Tate here at Allen Fieldhouse, and I'm joined by Benton Smith from his own Fieldhouse after tonight's 59-51 Kansas victory over TCU. And I got to admit, it was a long time between games inside Allen Fieldhouse, and I almost forgot how to get here tonight. It seems like I have not been in this building in forever, especially compared to what we're used to being here so often most years during this time of the year. So it seemed like there were a few Kansas players and maybe some fans who didn't want to be in here in the first half. A 19-18 half. Benton, what do you make of the slow and sluggish start for this Kansas offense and really both offenses tonight?
Yeah, that was kind of brutal to watch. Obviously KU's defense was better, but it wasn't like they're playing some like great offensive team or anything, and
Right,
it wasn't
right.
like we were seeing some dominating defensive performance like a classic Virginia of recent years or KU last year. It was just like, KU got better defensively, but TCU was also awful because they haven't played in 16 days, and they're not exactly at the top of the Big 12 anyway. I know they said like they kind of felt like there was a lid on the rim for KU offensively, but I mean, wow, that was a brutal stretch too. And I don't know, it seemed like a lot of it became mental, and I think Self kind of alluded to that afterward. And I mean, David McCormick didn't think that they played tight necessarily, but they clearly did. These guys just want to win. They were on a 3-game losing streak, and when those shots just kept rimming out or misfiring, you could see it kind of in their approach. They played tight. It kind of felt like the way you see a team play when things are going well in a postseason game, right? It felt more like that what we
Sure.
were watching.
Yeah,
So
I
it
think
was
that's a
it was
good call.
strange.
Yeah, that's a good call. And TCU was the opposite. I mean, even though they didn't play great either, they really had nothing to lose. Like you said, they hadn't played in forever, and they were just throwing up some shots in the first half that went in and got them that lead. And then, I thought it was so weird, man. And I tracked this and I wrote about this, but these two teams combined for about 16 minutes of scoreless basketball in the first half. I mean, KU held TCU to 7 minutes and 20 seconds without scoring after that
Mm-hmm.
10-2 lead. And then KU gave it all right back with an 8-minute and 34-second drought of their own. I mean, just a weird half. It obviously loosened up, opened up in the second half, and things were much better for both teams. But really, it came down to the final 5 minutes. And that's where I thought KU flexed its muscles and really was able to show something that maybe they can latch onto and walk out of here feeling good about. A couple of big-time plays by Marcus Garrett late. David McCormick hits the three-pointer of all things. But those things, they have a way of sparking teams, and they have a way of bringing a little life into the building and into a team that desperately needed to feel good about something. So, what do you make of the finish? How much momentum do you think they can gain from that? Because as you said, this wasn't an offensive juggernaut. TCU is not a tournament team. So nobody's going to be like, oh, my gosh, what a win. But in some ways, the way it ended, maybe it was a good win. Maybe they can feel good about this.
Well, it's so crazy because it's like a 4-point game when McCormick is basically forced to take that 3-pointer, right? Because the ball's in his hands with 2 on
Yeah,
the shot clock or whatever it was, and he had to get it up or it was just going to be a totally wasted possession. He drains it, and everybody, of course, goes crazy because the guy typically only plays on the block or takes his mid-range jumpers. So I mean, if the ball was not in his hands at that spot, at that juncture of the game, I mean, do they have that life that they played with down the stretch? Because it seemed like that was a real turning point.
a huge turning point. Put them
And
up
it's just
7.
completely circumstantial too. You never know how a game's going to change, and you never would have expected McCormick hitting a 3 would be the way that KU put this game away.
Yeah, great point. With the Super Bowl coming up and all those crazy prop bets, that one wouldn't have even been on the sheet. There wouldn't have been David McCormick made 3-pointers on the betting sheet. So he's only shot 2 in his KU career coming into this one, and now he has 3. He's 1 for 3, 33%. Pretty respectable average. So maybe he'll start jacking them up more. From what we've seen from him, he's not afraid to shoot the ball, so maybe he will. It doesn't sound like it, though. He told me after the game, right, yellow light. Like, until I see some more go in, I'm going to go yellow light with that. So I would imagine there's some coaches on that bench that say maybe it's still red. Maybe it's still red. So,
right.
but hey, the second half, after all week talking about mixing it up, KU starts their same starting five. No mix up there, and then the second half comes, and it's a major shakeup. Not only does DeJuan Harris get in the game, you wrote about that this week. People across the world were talking about him being an option to go into that starting lineup. He goes into the starting lineup in the second half tonight, but he's joined by Tyon Grant-Foster, who as recently as yesterday was almost completely written off. I mean, Self talked about a core group of 8. I don't think Tyon Grant-Foster was in the 8. He didn't name them, but he would be 9. I mean, as far as guys who have played recently, he'd played 9 minutes combined in KU's 4 most recent games prior to tonight. And he goes in there after not playing a minute in the first half, and he starts the second half, and he really sparked their offense with his athleticism, his energy, his effort, and just attacking the rim. Is it crazy to think this might have been sort of the coming out party for that kid? He had another one like that in this building, but it's been a long time between now and North Dakota State. So possible that that's something that maybe they got out of tonight, or is that sort of a pipe dream for Kansas fans?
I don't know. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I also feel like it's kind of a thing where, you know, he was able to totally kind of catch them off guard because he hasn't played a ton, right? And so there's not like a great or detailed scouting report on him. But now that, you know, he's played key moments against TCU, you know, obviously Tennessee will watch this game and they'll know kind of what to expect out of him when he gets in there. And
good point.
They're going to know like, hey, this guy wants to get to the rim, and then you kind of set up your defense to stop that if you're following the scouting report, and maybe he becomes a lot less effective. I was just glad that he stayed in there after he jacked that 3-pointer, which, speaking of red lights, I think he's kind of got a red light on 3-pointers, one for 18 or 19 on the year, something like that.
Unbelievable.
But a great athlete and did a great job of attacking the rim. And like you said, I mean, without him taking that approach there in the second half, you know, is this ended up being a 4-game losing streak, because he and DeJuan Harris kind of helped improve things early on in the second half. So TCU couldn't, you know, kind of keep KU in that rut.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It was really both of those guys, DeJuan on the defensive end and Tyon on the offensive end. What I thought was wild about Tyon's night was, I mean, he wasn't perfect by any means. You mentioned the 3-pointer he missed. He also turned it over 3 times. One of them was a charge at the very end of the game. And if you look at that, it was like inside a minute, and he charges unnecessarily, and Self immediately takes him out. And so here's this kid who played a great game. He played 17 minutes in the second half. He was a huge part of their victory. Everything in the world said that when that kid checked out or came off the floor for the final time tonight, it was going to be hugs and high fives and just a real nice scene for this kid having a big moment. And instead, he charges, Self yanks him, and as he's walking off the floor with 30-some seconds left, Self's got both hands in the air going, "What are you doing?" I mean, so, I'm sure they had some good moments in the locker room, and I know Self was obviously very pleased with how he played and what he brought to the team. But I thought that was just so funny. That should have been like the biggest, hug fest. Instead, it was just one of those, oh, my God. So such is life with this team that continues to show its up and down tendencies. Jalen Wilson, Christian Brown, not good nights. And those are 2 starters that KU wouldn't have won some games early in the season without. And they need to get those guys going again. But maybe some of that pressure that you talked about, that Self talked about, that these guys were feeling, maybe a guy like Tyon Grant-Foster coming out and having a night to show, hey, I can help. Maybe that'll take some of the load off the shoulders of Wilson and Brown and other guys, and maybe they'll relax and go back to playing their style of basketball, because they're too talented to play like this, and Kansas obviously needs them to play better if they want to get back into the goals that they have, right? I mean, they're obviously still way back in the race, and the Big 12 thing's over, but they got a lot of goals and objectives and things they still want to accomplish and believe they can, and they're not going to do it without those 2 guys getting back somewhat close to form. So it'll be interesting to see if this has any effect on their games moving forward. Any final thoughts here tonight, Benton?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's really interesting is, which Self mentioned after the game, you just had this night where you're really struggling to score, and now you're going on the road with like no prep time to face a really good defensive team against Tennessee. So I don't know. I'm just really interested to see how they play on Saturday at Tennessee, because I mean, I feel like it could go any direction. I just feel like I have no feel for this team, and the inconsistencies. You know, they could very well have their best game of the season on Saturday night, or they could struggle and, you know, lose by 15. Who knows?
Yeah, well said. Who starts?
Oh, well, that's another who knows, right?
I'll put you on the spot though. Who do you start? Let's say that. Don't predict it, but who, if you're in charge, who do you start?
I'd probably, at this point, in kind of the way things have played out recently, I'd probably put in Harris for Wilson. Just something's not quite clicking with him recently, and you know, maybe a little mix up there would kind of reignite something with him and kind of get him back to playing being the high energy, really effective guy that he was back in December when KU won 8 in a row or whatever it was. And obviously, I just like the way that the offense runs and looks when Harris is on the floor, because he is that natural point guard, and I think Self talked about this too. I mean, allows Marcus Garrett to play off the ball and maybe have a little bit more comfort with what he's doing.
Yeah, I love it. That's exactly what I would do. The same starting five, Harris for Wilson, and then put him out there with Ochai and Marcus Garrett, Christian Brown, David McCormick. And if you do that, and I don't know if they will, but if you do that, all of a sudden you got Jalen Wilson and Tyon Grant Foster as your first couple of guys off the bench. That's some athleticism, firepower, some shooting ability. I mean, that could be a nice little I'm doing this all night, sorry. But that could be a nice little punch and scoring punch off the bench if that's the way things settle in even. So it'll be really interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that would probably look at tonight and say, hey, why not put Tyon in the starting lineup? But I mean, you said it. Tennessee, known for its defense. It would be a road game in the teeth of the beast. I mean, that is a tough spot to put a young kid like that in, especially when his last play of the night was a charge and a turnover. Like, let's, you know, I don't want to make too much of that, but I just think that's a tough spot. Let him get comfortable, let him sit, bring him in, and tell him the exact same thing you told him tonight. Himself told him tonight before he went in, go make some plays, go be athletic, go be you. And he did that, and it was a huge part of KU's win. 59-51 over TCU. It snaps a 3-game losing streak. KU needed it big time. They're 11-5 overall now, 5-4 in Big 12 play, and they will head to Tennessee this weekend for a 5 p.m. Saturday SEC Big 12 battle on ESPN. So that should be a fun game. It'll be a good judge of where they're at and how much farther they need to go, or if they do. So it'll be interesting. And Self kind of talked about, of course, they want to go down and win this game, but he's not going to lose sleep over the outcome no matter what happens. It's short prep. It's a out-of-conference game. It's a tough spot. I mean, there's no reason to cry over what happens. Just go compete. And maybe that will benefit these guys too. Take some of that pressure off of them and then go see what happens. Feel good about playing down there, win or lose. Jump back into Big 12 play and see how you can finish this thing off. For Benton Smith, I'm Matt Tate at Allen Fieldhouse. KU wins at 59-51. Thanks for checking out KU Sports Extra. We'll talk to you guys again real soon.